There has been significant controversy among some Republican Congress members who allege their lives are in danger due to Donald Trump's Department of Justice. They are actively pushing for greater transparency regarding the Epstein files, and it appears they are experiencing considerable resistance. Take Thomas Massie, for example, the Republican from Kentucky who initiated a petition to advance this effort. He has publicly stated that the Trump DOJ, alongside the FBI, has threatened to prosecute his staff for their participation in that petition. Furthermore, let's not overlook Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I'm going to say this here on camera because it's important. One of Kash Patel's staff threatened my staff with a criminal investigation if we didn't straighten up and play ball.
I was going to ask you about that, but since you brought it up, and I didn't
I'm bringing it up.
Okay, you brought it up.
And so, like a criminal investigation having nothing to do, he said it was going to be a fraud. We're going to investigate one of your staff for fraud. Right. And he told another one of my staff this.
She has been outspoken about her personal safety, cautioning that if something were to happen to her, it would not be a suicide, but rather the act of someone linked to her push for disclosure. It's truly difficult to grasp that she voiced that publicly. These threats don't end there, they also extend to survivors. Just observe what occurred within the DOJ to certain individuals discussing the Epstein files. One senior official who was involved in the Witness Safety Coordination Program was dismissed immediately after a reporter known for sting operations interviewed him on the matter.
Procure girls and women for Epstein, but she herself participated in their abuse. I think that's an important thing for people to understand. And then she also, made threats. She made threats to my sister, to our family, when it was clear that my sister had reported her. And so I think that to be told that suddenly she's being brought to the table as a potential source of information when she's previously been charged with perjury by the government is very confusing and unsettling.
Unsurprisingly, a lawsuit has been filed on behalf of that former DOJ employee. Meanwhile, Bloomberg acquired information through their request from the federal courts, which demonstrated just how vast the cover-up is within the DOJ and FBI. There was a staggering amount of money, roughly $1 million, spent on overtime during March solely for redacting portions of the Epstein files. Thomas Massie recently appeared on InfoWars, sharing his dramatic accounts of how FBI agents and others have intimidated his staff with the threat of criminal investigations. This is a very unusual situation, especially when you consider the timing of everything. There is much to process here, so let's delve into it.
That was the acting deputy chief of the Office of Enforcement Operations, Joseph Schnitt, telling a stranger about the FBI and DOJ's handling of the Epstein files. Schnitt, who works at a high level inside the Department of Justice, goes on to comment on the inconsistent statements, special treatment of Ghislaine Maxwell, and the blatant backtracking on promises of transparency.
Then we consider Marjorie Taylor Greene, who recently published a post about not being suicidal and facing harassment, even mentioning her faith in a higher power. She implored people to identify who might want to silence her if anything happened to her. It certainly sounds intense, particularly given the death threats she mentioned receiving from Trump supporters after Trump called her Marjorie Trader Brown. We also cannot ignore the Epstein survivors who have faced threats themselves. Annie Farmer, one of the survivors linked to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, has recounted her experiences regarding the intimidation they suffered. It's noteworthy to hear someone share how Maxwell was implicated in a serious situation involving child trafficking connected to Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans who seem to be trying to conceal it. In a separate but related development, let's discuss some interesting coverage from O'Keefe and his group, O'Keefe Media Group. It's evident we may disagree on several topics, but he managed to film footage that resulted in the Department of Justice firing a person involved in that recording. That individual has since chosen to sue the DOJ, claiming his First Amendment rights were violated. The video shows someone saying that vast numbers of files exist, but it appears any Republican or conservative references will be redacted while liberal Democrats are left untouched. It's quite the conundrum. But those files definitely exist. Yes, thousands and thousands of Epstein files. They will redact every Republican or conservative person in those files. Leave all the liberal Democratic people in those files. I think they visited that Maxwell person. Yes. And also involved she got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently, which is against BOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender. They're offering her something to keep quiet. That was the acting deputy chief of the Office of Enforcement Operations, Joseph Schnitt, telling a stranger about the FBI and DOJ's handling of the Epstein files. Schnitt, who holds a high-level position inside the Department of Justice, proceeds to comment on the inconsistent statements, special treatment of Ghislaine Maxwell, and the blatant reversal on promises of transparency. What do you do for work here? I work for the Department of Justice. Okay, been there like 23 years. I'm an analyst. I'll be acting deputy chief of our office for a few months starting next week. I work closely with like all the federal law enforcement agencies and the U.S. attorney's offices, the prosecutors and stuff. The thing is, it's interesting because I do deal with so many of the agencies like the Bureau of Prisons, the Marshal Service, FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office. Mark Zed, a lawyer over at the Midas Touch Network, has just filed a First Amendment lawsuit against Bondi and the Department of Justice. They are alleging that the illegal firing of Deputy Chief Joseph Schmidt did not follow due process. Apparently, Schmidt's comments, which were made on a private date, were integrated into what appears to be a targeted operation against him. Now, turning to some compelling reporting from Bloomberg, which has been very successful lately, particularly with those 18,000 emails from the Epstein estate. They are also highlighting a phone call involving Yuri Yuskov, Dmitry Krill, and Steve Witko that implies the U.S. was acting as an agent for Putin with the goal of dismantling Ukraine. Jason Leupold, an excellent reporter for Bloomberg, shared an exclusive report stating the FBI handed over a large number of emails in response to his FOIA request. These emails provide an insight into how the discussions of the Epstein files were managed. The DOJ is mobilizing, getting ready to receive boxes tomorrow. New York agents are traveling to headquarters in the morning, and once they arrive in Winchester, they will begin photographing and processing those physical files. They aim to execute a rolling delivery of documents to demonstrate the FBI's dedication to transparency, something they mentioned back in March but didn't deliver on. Leupold's notes reveal precisely how many hours the FBI has devoted to this, with some agents even working nights and weekends. In fact, the Bureau spent $851,000 in overtime on personnel from various divisions, including counterintelligence and international operations, just to handle the Epstein case. Between the 17th and the 22nd of March, some documents were released that showed exactly how much time the FBI staff dedicated to their work. They accumulated 4,737 hours of overtime between January and July. Can you believe that? Trump has the audacity to call this a hoax. Seriously, a hoax involving 4,737 hours of overtime. Now, if you think about it, simply multiplying those overtime hours could result in a massive number, right? We could be discussing as many as 100,000 hours if we continue with the calculations. And when you factor in what lawyers charge, which can range from $500 to $700 an hour currently, you would reach tens of millions, possibly even hundreds of millions of dollars spent on this entire process. More than 70% of that overtime was actually recorded just in March. That's when they were deeply engrossed in those Epstein files. The documents also revealed emails that suggest some specialized training was provided to staff working on what they termed the Epstein Transparency Project. They have even given it a nickname, the Special Redaction Project, which is a sophisticated way of saying they were removing specific information. This training included PowerPoint presentations and video guidance on how to sift through the files. You really have to appreciate the seriousness of naming it the Special Redaction Project. Remember, that's all about taking things out. Then, on the 10th of March, personnel from the FBI's Office of General Counsel and their Information Management Division were discussing discrete requests for Epstein-related records and how they were planning to digitize and redact physical files, all to demonstrate a pledge to transparency. They claimed they were even reviewing some videos. An email from April 15th mentioned that one of the clips originated from the New York City jail, where Epstein was found dead a month after his arrest in 2019 on sex trafficking charges. The Department of Justice subsequently released 11 hours of that jail video in July. Just a quick reminder that some sections of it were also missing. Lastly, there's an FBI email concerning the videos they reviewed for release, including the security footage of Ghislaine Maxwell. The email began quite cordially, saying, "Hi Shannon, great to chat with you." It was a follow-up to their prior conversation, and it confirmed that all the reviews on Epstein-related images and videos were finalized, with more detailed information on the case number and other related content included. It's truly astonishing how much material is available, right? We have everything from time-lapse videos in offices and street surveillance footage to aerial shots from the FBI and videos of police interrogations. There is even marketing material mixed in there. It's a vast amount of information coming to light. Concurrently, a federal judge in New York, Judge Angelmere, was working on a crucial matter. He sent a communication to the Department of Justice referencing the new Epstein Transparency Act, which had just been enacted. The judge was clearly asserting his authority, asking if they wanted him to release grand jury testimony. Now, that is generally strictly forbidden under Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. So he was eager to receive a list of what they actually intended to hand over. It's almost ironic because while the Trump team appeared to be playing a casual game of checkers, Judge Angelmere was undeniably engaged in a more strategic game of chess. In response to that, the DOJ had to compose a respectful letter. They addressed it to Judge Angelmere and referred to his order from November 25, 2025, assuring him they would make every effort to answer all his questions. They proceeded to list various categories in response, including grand jury subpoena returns from places like Google, Instagram, and Microsoft. They collected records from several government agencies, including the Bureau of Prisons, NYPD records checks, and Delaware's Division of Corporate Records. They also included specifics about records from the FAA, police reports, school documents, numerous search warrant outcomes, emails, cloud searches, and those scans of photographs, along with materials retrieved during physical and electronic searches of computers and gadgets. Not to overlook, there were materials from law firms that represented the victims, arrest reports, photographs from the incidents, and any other materials seized during these arrests. They even addressed materials linked to civil litigations, recordings, and transcripts of depositions, and images of properties, including those related to Epstein and Maxwell, as well as immigration records. It's a significant collection of documentation being disclosed. So let's dissect this. We are looking at a multitude of items that have come from online purchases made at various internet stores, as well as materials gathered from the Palm Beach Police Department and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. This encompasses all kinds of reports, photographs, and videos, plus forensic exam reports that pertain to electronic extraction from different media. Additionally, you have copies of photos and other materials that third parties, including victims, have voluntarily provided. There are records from postal and courier services too, along with materials produced by the estate of Epstein, driver's license information, DMV records, interview notes, and communications linked to all of this. Now let's take a moment to consider the Department of Justice. They previously asserted they didn't possess certain emails from the Epstein estate because, well, they claimed those emails were not relevant and were never surrendered. It's perplexing, though, because they mentioned that the House Oversight Committee was the only group that requested these documents, emphasizing that the Epstein estate collaborated with the committee, but not with them. That is completely baseless. They are the DOJ. Of course, they could have demanded those documents directly from the Epstein estate, and amazingly, they actually did. It is all right there in their file, which means they have been deceiving us from the beginning. It is becoming much clearer now why they are intimidating these Congress members and even their staff, attempting to keep this entire situation suppressed.